The rain in London has a lingering persistence about it. Unlike the torrential downpours of Manhattan that strike with overwhelming force, it weaves a fine, dense veil, dyeing the red bricks of Baker Street a warm ochre. Even the black cast-iron railings at the street corner glisten with a damp sheen. I stood outside Pendleton's cafe, clutching an antique sketchbook I just purchased at Sotheby's. The tip of my Italian handcrafted leather shoes was already smudged with a ring of mud. My phone screen lit up and dimmed repeatedly, displaying the message I'd sent to Sebastian half an hour earlier. I have the replica of Monet's water lily sketch you wanted. Waiting for you at our usual spot. Below it was a stark, empty space. When the glass door swung open, it wafted out the aroma of cinnamon and toasted muffins. Evan stood before me, holding two black umbrellas. A few strands of his light golden hair, dampened by the drizzle, clung to his smooth forehead, like an angel from a Renaissance painting. I guessed you'd forgotten about Sebastian's flexible timing. Again, he pressed one umbrella into my hand, its handle still retaining the warmth of his palm. I've held the window seat for 20 minutes. Your Earl Grey with 3 lumps of sugar, the froth has just settled, and the temperature is perfect. I followed him into the cafe, and the oak floorboards creaked softly beneath my feet, a unique quirk of this century-old establishment. Sebastian's usual seat was empty, the leather upholstery still bore the S.E. initials he'd carved into it as a boy, a whimsy of the Harper Group air that the waiters had indulged for 20 years. Evan carefully placed my sketchbook on a waterproof placemat, deliberately avoiding the gilded patterns on the edge as his fingertips brushed the cover. How did the law school hearing go? Claire texted me at noon, saying the opposing lawyer nearly made you rummage through the files in court with fake evidence. I took a sip of the hot tea, and warmth slid down my throat into my stomach, dispelling the damp chill from the rain. It's all thanks to the 1998 intellectual property case compilation you gave me last week. It had exactly the same legal logic for contesting fake evidence. Evan was the youngest law professor at the University of London, having entered the legal profession 3 years before me. I still remembered that 7 years ago, when I was an intern at the law firm, I would always find a cup of hot cocoa with a sticky note on my desk every night after working overtime. Sometimes it read, evidence change should be like a 3-tiered afternoon tea stand, clear and logical, and other times, don't forget to water your lily of the valley plant. His handwriting was as neat as printed text. Back then, my world revolved entirely around Sebastian. In the VIP stands at the Wimbledon Tennis Championships, he sat in a white linen suit, stirring champagne with a silver spoon. His presence made my heart race faster than the match itself. Sunlight fell on his thick eyelashes like scattered diamond dust. When he turned to ask me, "What do you think of Federer's backhand?" the beauty mark beneath his right eye carried the allure of a Byron poem. After the match, he took the initiative to ask for my contact information, saying, "It's rare to meet a girl who can talk about both commercial law and tennis rules." During that period, he mastered the art of romance flawlessly. He booked a private box at the Covent Garden Opera House and had the tenors sing O Sole Mio for me during the intermission. He covered a luxury cruise ship on the Thames with red roses and pulled out a necklace engraved with my initials from his pocket. For my 25th birthday, he even rented the entire London Eye, making every capsule light up with the name Bella. Like any girl lost in a romantic fantasy, I overlooked the fact that he was always at least 20 minutes late for every date, that he always muted his phone during dinner, and that he never introduced me to his family or business partners. "He's probably tied up in the board meeting," Evan's voice interrupted my reverie. He was sprinkling cinnamon powder evenly into his latte with a spoon. Yesterday's front page of the Financial Times said Harper Group is negotiating a port acquisition with the Abu Dhabi consortium. At a time like this, he probably even sleeps with the contracts in his arms. I nodded, my fingertips unconsciously brushing the leather cover of the sketchbook, something Sebastian had asked for. He said, "A female artist I just met loves Monet. This will make the perfect gift." I didn't dare ask who this female artist was, just as I'd never dared ask what our ambiguous relationship, closer than friends, less than lovers, really meant. The first time I doubted this relationship was in his apartment near Kensington Palace. I'd cut my business trip short and bought his favorite strawberry tart to surprise him, but instead, I smelled a limited edition Jo Malone English Pear Freesia perfume in the hallway diffuser, iconic to Hollywood actress Sophia, and certainly not left behind by the careless female assistant he mentioned. When he came home and saw the empty perfume bottle in my hand, he casually tossed his coat onto the sofa. "It was left by a client representative," he said. "Don't overthink it." But the fleeting panic in his eyes stabbed at my heart like a needle. After that, his lateness became more frequent, and his explanations grew more perfunctory. I waited outside his apartment until 3 a.m., only to be greeted by a hug reeking of alcohol and unfamiliar perfume. The anniversary dinner I'd carefully prepared turned cold, and his only response was a text saying, "Last-minute business dinner," before he went radio silent. When my father had a sudden heart attack and was hospitalized, I called him a dozen times. When he finally answered, he was laughing in a Monaco casino. "Bella, stop being clingy, I'm on a winning streak." Every time I wanted to confront him, he'd appease me with grander gestures of romance, a six-figure bracelet, a weekend getaway to Paris, but those cold luxury goods could never warm the loneliness of waiting. "Isabella?" Evan tapped the table gently. I realized my tears had fallen onto the sketchbook, blurring a small patch of ink. He handed me a handkerchief embroidered with lilies of the valley, a gift I'd given him for his birthday last year, and I never imagined he'd carried it with him ever since. "You've always known the answer, haven't you?" His gaze was as soft as the waters of the Thames. "You're just reluctant to let go of the memories you've idealized." I turned my head to look out the window. The rain had stopped at some point, and sunlight filtered through the clouds, casting dappled shadows on the stone pavement. Across the street, outside a bookstore, an elderly couple was helping each other up the steps. The old man carefully brushed a leaf off his wife's shoulder. In that moment, countless memories of Evan flooded back, how he always tilted his umbrella toward me on rainy days, leaving his own shoulder soaked, how he'd order takeout at just the right time when I worked late, ensuring I got hot fish and chips, how he'd secretly replace my withered lily of the valley with a new one, saying, "I picked this specially at the Dutch flower market, it blooms twice as long." A week later, on a crisp morning, Sebastian's black Bentley suddenly pulled up outside my law firm. He was wearing a custom dark blue suit and holding a large bouquet of red roses, drawing whispers from passing colleagues. "Bella, I'm sorry for neglecting you lately." He pushed the roses into my arms. His cologne, still the cedar scent I knew so well, lingered in the air. "The acquisition deal is finally over. I've booked a table at Gordon Ramsay's 3 Michelin-star restaurant to make it up to you." The thorns of the red roses pricked my palm, and the dewdrops on the petals suddenly seemed harsh and dazzling. The night before, I'd worked overtime until 10 p.m. on a cross-border intellectual property case. Evan had joined me for fish and chips at the corner diner and helped me revise every loophole in the contract word by word. Pointing to the dense legal clauses, he'd said, "Love is like the law, it needs clear definitions. An ambiguous relationship is like an unenforceable contract, it will always fall apart eventually." That was when I truly realized my infatuation with Sebastian was nothing more than a projection of an ideal lover. What Evan offered was real, tangible warmth. "Sebastian," I handed the roses back to him, my voice soft but unwavering. "Let's end this." The smile froze on his face, and he stared at me in disbelief. "Bella, what are you throwing a tantrum about? Is it because I've been busy lately? I can buy you the latest Hermes bag, take you to the Maldives, anything you want." His words were like a blunt knife, cutting through my long-standing self-deception. He'd never understood what I truly wanted, not luxury goods or grand romance, but someone who remembered I hated coriander, who brought me hot coffee when I worked late, and who stayed by my side when I was sad. I turned and walked toward Evan's car, parked nearby. He was leaning against the door, holding my thermos, filled with the honey lemon water I'd forgotten that morning. When he saw me approaching, he immediately opened the passenger door, carefully placing his hand above my head to shield me from the doorframe. "Are you sure you don't want to think it over?" He glanced at me as he started the car, concern filling his eyes. "I know you still have feelings for him." Outside the window, Tower Bridge slowly opened, and a cruise ship on the Thames sounded its horn as it passed. Sunlight glistened on the water's surface. "Obsession is like a whirlpool in the river," I said. "If I keep sinking, I'll only be swallowed whole." Evan didn't speak, he just squeezed my hand gently. His palm was warm and dry, like a heater in the cold winter, giving me an unprecedented sense of security. In the days that followed, I threw myself into my work, and Evan became my personal legal consultant. Every morning, he'd bring me an English breakfast to the office, sunny-side-up eggs cooked just right, and roasted tomatoes with a hint of char, exactly how I liked them. At noon, we'd walk in the park near the law firm, discussing cases and chatting about trivial things. He told me he collected many jazz vinyl records, and I shared that Monet's Water Lilies was my favorite painting. In the evening, he'd accompany me to the library to research materials, and we'd walk along the quiet streets together until the library closed. Our relationship deepened in these ordinary moments. There were no grand confessions or fancy gifts, but warmth was everywhere. He'd immediately hand me a tissue when I sneezed, pull band-aids out of his bag when my high heels rubbed my feet raw, and hug me more excitedly than I did when I won a case. Colleagues teased, "Professor Evan is practically your personal knight," and though I'd deny it, my heart would be filled with sweetness. For the Monet retrospective, Evan had gotten VIP tickets 2 weeks in advance through a friend. Standing before the original Water Lilies, I stared at the shifting light and shadow on the canvas, suddenly recalling myself 5 years earlier, right here in this gallery, sobbing uncontrollably after a breakup, feeling that the loneliness in Monet's brushstrokes mirrored my own. "The first time I saw you was here," Evan's voice echoed beside me. He handed me a yellowed photo. In it, I was wearing a cream dress, wiping tears in front of water lilies. At that moment, I thought, I wish I could make this girl stop crying. My hands trembled as I held the photo, and tears fell again, but this time, they were warm. His companionship hadn't been a passing fancy, it had been 5 years of silent devotion. "I knew you had someone else in your heart back then," he wiped my tears gently, his fingertips cool against my skin. "So I could only stay by your side as a friend, sharing your joys and sorrows." That night, we sat on a bench by the Thames. The evening breeze carried the dampness of the river, mixed with the lights of the London Eye in the distance. Evan pulled a velvet box from his pocket. Inside was a silver ring, engraved with a tiny lily of the valley, my favorite flower. "I've waited 5 years for this moment," his ears turned pink, like a nervous teenager. "Isabella, will you marry me? I can't promise you the grand romance Sebastian did, but I can promise you breakfast every morning just the way you like it, an umbrella tilted for you every rainy day, and a light left on for you every late night." I nodded through my tears, smiling at his earnest eyes. He slipped the ring onto my ring finger, it fit perfectly, as if it had been made just for me. "Evan," I threw myself into his arms, feeling his steady heartbeat against my chest. "I fell in love with you a long time ago. I was just too foolish to see it." He held me tightly, his chin resting on the top of my head. A cruise ship glided past on the Thames, and its lights cast dappled patterns on us. In that moment, I knew I'd finally found my happiness. Our love was filled with the warmth of daily life, more reassuring than any grand romance. On weekends, we'd rummage through old books at the Notting Hill Flea Market. He'd patiently wait for me as I knelt at a stall, flipping through yellowed art albums. We'd feed pigeons in Hyde Park, and when flocks of them took flight over the lawn, he'd suddenly grab my hand and spin me around in the sunlight. We'd cook spaghetti at his small apartment. His tomato sauce was the most delicious I'd ever tasted, and the kitchen walls gradually filled with photos of us together. Evan had a dedicated photo wall in his apartment, covered with pictures of me from over the years, me smiling at my graduation ceremony, me looking determined in court, me wrapped in a blanket with a cold, even me crouching by the road feeding stray cats. I took these secretly. He scratched his head, looking a little embarrassed. I know it's silly, but I wanted to capture every moment of you. I hugged him tightly, my heart overflowing with emotion. True love, I realized, was having someone who cherished every part of you. Sebastian found me when Evan and I were decorating our new home, a sunlit apartment with a view of the London Eye, where the Thames stretched out right beyond the living room windows. We'd bought a large sofa, planning to curl up together and watch old movies on weekends, and placed a small table on the balcony, looking forward to drinking red wine and stargazing on summer nights. Sebastian stood at the door, his suit crumpled, eyes bloodshot, unrecognizable from the confident man he once was. Bella, I know I was wrong, his voice was hoarse, tinged with desperation. Come back to me, please. I've cut ties with that female artist. I've transferred part of Harper Group's shares to your name. I can give you the best life, 100 times better than what Evan can offer. He pulled a stock transfer agreement and a huge check out of his briefcase, slamming them on the coffee table. It's all yours, as long as you come back. Evan stood beside me silently, taking my hand and giving me a reassuring look. Sebastian seemed like a stranger to me now. Sebastian, you've never understood what I want, I said, pointing at the check on the coffee table. To you, money might be the best thing in the world, but to me, it's worthless. I don't want shares or checks, I want someone who remembers I hate coriander, who brings me hot coffee when I work late, and who stays by my side when I'm scared. Evan gives me all that. You never did. But we were together for 3 years. Sebastian grabbed my arm excitedly. Were those memories all fake? Have you forgotten our promise on the London Eye? The first opera I took you to? I pulled my arm away gently, my voice calm. Those memories are real, but they're in the past. Just like the Thames never flows backward, I'll never go back to the way things were. Evan saw Sebastian out, and when he came back, he held an envelope. He left this, he handed it to me. The check and a letter are inside. I opened the envelope. The letter was filled with Sebastian's remorse and reluctance. He'd never imagined I'd really leave him, he wrote, and only now realized how much he loved me. I threw the letter and check into the trash, then turned and hugged Evan. I don't need any of this. I just need you. After that, Sebastian began his frantic attempts to win me back. He waited for me outside the law firm every day, holding different bouquets of flowers. He used his connections to poach an important cross-border client from our firm, hoping to force me to contact him. He even went to my parents, saying he'd give up his entire fortune if they could make me forgive him. When my parents called to urge me to think it over, I just smiled and said, Mom, Dad, I've already found someone who makes me happy. When Evan found out Sebastian had stolen our client, he didn't get angry. Instead, he helped me re-examine the case and found loopholes in the other party's contract. We worked overtime day and night, gathering evidence, and in the end, we not only won the client back but also got the other party to pay a huge penalty. I'm here for you, he hugged me, his voice firm. No one can hurt you while I'm around. Sebastian's final act of desperation came at our engagement party. We'd held a small celebration at a luxury hotel by the Thames, inviting only family and close friends. Evan and I were in the middle of cutting the engagement cake when Sebastian burst in. He was wearing a black suit, his hair messy, his eyes wild. Bella, just tell me one thing, he pushed past the security guards and rushed toward me. Do you really not regret it? Are you really going to give me up for this penniless professor? The guests fell silent, and the air turned tense. Evan stepped in front of me, his eyes cold as he faced Sebastian. Mr. Sebastian, please respect Bella's choice and leave. Don't ruin our engagement party. I'm asking Bella, not you. Sebastian roared, his eyes filled with pleading as he looked at me. Bella, I know I was wrong before, but I'll change. I'll make you breakfast every day, remember all your likes and dislikes, and be there for you whenever you need me. Come back to me, okay? Let's get married again. I stepped out from behind Evan, my gaze steady as I looked at Sebastian. Sebastian, I've never been more certain of anything in my life. I don't regret my choice. I love Evan deeply, and I'm going to spend the rest of my life with him. Your so-called change is just because you're unwilling to lose me. You don't love me, you love yourself. Sebastian stared at me, then at Evan's hand tightly holding mine. Finally, he crumpled to the floor, burying his face in his hands and sobbing. The security guards dragged him out, and the party resumed its joyful atmosphere. Evan wiped the tears from the corner of my eye, smiling. Don't worry, it's all over now. I nodded, looking at the guests who were cheering for us, my heart filled with happiness. We held our wedding the following spring, in an ancient castle in Scotland. The sun shone brightly that day, and the castle lawn was covered with lilies of the valley. Evan had specially flown them in from the Netherlands. I wore a white wedding dress, holding a bouquet of lilies of the valley, and walked slowly toward Evan, who stood at the altar. He was in a crisp tuxedo, his eyes soft and warm as he looked at me, as if I were his entire world. When the pastor asked, "Do you, Isabella, take Evan to be your lawfully wedded husband, to have and to hold, in sickness and in health, for richer or for poorer, until death do you part?" I looked into Evan's eyes, my vision blurred by tears. I do. When Evan kissed me, I smelled the familiar cedar scent of his cologne and felt the warmth of his palm, the reassuring touch that belonged only to me. Our married life was plain and happy. Every morning, Evan woke up 10 minutes earlier to make me breakfast. Every evening, we curled up on the sofa together, watching old movies or discussing the next day's work. On weekends, we took our dog for walks in the countryside manor or visited art galleries. Sometimes I'd watch Evan cook, thinking about the person I used to be, and smile to myself. Once, we attended a dinner party on a cruise ship on the Thames. As we looked out at the sparkling night view, Evan suddenly asked, if Sebastian had realized his feelings earlier, would you have gone back to him? I leaned against his chest, gazing at the distant London eye. No, I said with a smile. I know that even if he changed, we could never go back. Just like the Thames only flows forward, I'll only move forward, toward you. Evan held me tightly, pressing a gentle kiss to my forehead. The wind by the Thames blew softly, carrying the dampness of the river and the fragrance of flowers. I knew I'd finally found my happiness. True love isn't about grand romance or expensive gifts, it's about the quiet companionship that lasts a lifetime and the unwavering support that never fades. As Evan had said, he might not give me the wealth Sebastian could, but he gave me a lifetime of peace and warmth, and that was all I'd ever wanted. As the night grew darker, the London eye lit up more brightly, its reflection on the Thames like a sea of stars. I leaned against Evan's chest, listening to his steady heartbeat and feeling his warm body against mine, a happy smile playing on my lips. I knew that no matter what the future held, as long as Evan was by my side, I had nothing to fear. The wind by the Thames had finally blown for me, carrying the scent of my own happiness.